And, you know, the FBI has, and you have a lot of great people in the FBI, but the FBI has taken hits like in history like they haven't taken. And look, I'm a victim of it. They've come after me. They've come after me on many things, all debunked. The Mueller report, the fake dossier. How about the dossier, which was written up by the Democrats? All fake stuff and a disgusting thing. And I had to go through a long time. And still we did more than just about any president in history with all of that stuff on my shoulders. They tell me, oh, I was a Russian agent. Okay, I was a Russian agent. I used to say, at first I thought they were kidding. When I heard that, I said, that's sort of funny. I didn't know what the hell I hadn't even spoken to anybody in Russia. You know, they went through 5 million phone calls, and I didn't make one call to Russia. That was a little bit bad, but they didn't denounce that. They didn't talk about that. No, we have a very, very corrupt system, and it's got to be, and we need from the top, we need great people. We need heads of the FBI. We need heads of the top people at the Department of Justice.
I'm honored to be joined by Kris Goldsmith this morning. He's a former Army sergeant and the CEO of Task Force Butler, which trains veterans in research and operations to counter extremism. Kris, I think your favorite shirt on your TikTok hits actually captures the mission best. I think it says, "Cops don't stop Nazis. We do." Give us the primer on Task Force Butler, and then I want to talk about what Trump intends to do to the FBI.
Yeah. So speaking of that shirt, Task Force Butler's store just went back online. So people who are interested in supporting Task Force Butler can go to taskforcebutler.org, click the store link, and you can get that shirt. So the reason that that we exist is because cops don't stop Nazis. Full stop. I mean, hate crimes occur not just from random people on the subway in New York City, right? Like there's a problem with that. But there are organized neo-Nazi, explicitly fascist, white nationalist organizations that have gotten into the habit of committing violence and property destruction against vulnerable populations. And law enforcement is usually not there for them. Part of the reason is because law enforcement at the most local level, they're the ones who people interact with the most, are not well equipped to deal with organized hate. So Task Force Butler was started so that we can train veterans to conduct open source intelligence research into these bad actors. We can find evidence of criminality. And then we can use our privilege as veterans. We have a platform. That's why people are listening to this conversation right now, because we're vets. So we use that platform to help educate law enforcement, from attorneys general to district attorneys to sheriff's offices on what hate crimes are and how to prosecute them.
It feels like we are living in an environment where hate has been given a new license to express itself. It was bad enough before the election, but anecdotally, at least, we're getting story after story of extremists from the far right, which is now the Republican Party, threatening little girls at school. I'm talking about 5-year-old extremists, right? And this is not them. This is their parents that they are channeling. And it just seems like the Trump win has unleashed a Pandora's box and shown America, or some Americans, at their worst.
Yeah. I mean, there are so many ways that we could take this conversation. Like there has been for well over a decade, a major problem with the gaming community about extremism, intentional recruiting and radicalization that occurs on gaming platforms. And that reaches kids that are very young, far younger than most people think. I think a lot of people think that it's like teenage boys that are exposed to these extremist ideas. Like, no, it's like 5-year-olds who end up playing Roblox and end up on a server full of neo-Nazis who are grooming them, literally, little children, into becoming white supremacists. So, Donald Trump coming onto the political stage and the media's free advertising that they gave for his campaign in 2015 and 2016 really did create a permission structure for people to show their worst. Nazis used to be afraid of coming out in the street and, wearing their hate literally on their chest, on their shirts, or flying a flag. They're not afraid anymore because they've got the top cover of a man who was president and now, unfortunately, will be president again. And that's why Task Force Butler, actually, we just announced this on Veterans Day, is partnering with Common Defense, which is the largest grassroots progressive veterans organization in the country. Common Defense was founded originally as Vets Against Hate, or Vets versus Hate, like a hashtag movement. And it turned into a movement of tens of thousands of veterans nationwide in 50 states who are united around the principles of anti-racism and anti-bigotry.
It's Ken Harbaugh. Quick break here to let you know that we'd love to hear from you. Your comments, suggestions, thoughts about future topics and guests. Email us at info@thekenharbaughshow.com, and make sure to rate and review us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks, and back to the show. What does it mean that Trump is going after the FBI, the federal law enforcement agency that has as its mandate taking down the very same organizations that have served as Trump's shock troops, the Proud Boys, right? Designated a terrorist organization by Canada, told to stand back and stand by the president-elect.
Yeah, so Ryan J. Riley, an NBC Justice reporter, he was like their primary January 6th reporter, wrote a book called Sedition Hunters, just came out in the last year, and it talks about how the FBI was already broken. Most people think of the FBI the way they're depicted in movies, like they are everywhere on the internet. They've got spy cameras. They're tailing people, right? That's not the real FBI. Like, yes, that exists for people in the mafia who are being tailed, but like that doesn't exist more broadly than that. Part of the reason that Task Force Butler exists is because the FBI is not large enough to chase down minor hate crimes. The FBI isn't really investigating hate groups until there's a real and imminent threat of deadly violence. It takes it to that level. So if and when the FBI is being dismantled and or overburdened because Trump is directing the FBI to investigate his political enemies, the FBI is not going to have the bandwidth to do what they're currently doing, which is going after the most dangerous of the most dangerous domestic terrorists who are doing things like just before Election Day, like a day or two before Election Day, a neo-Nazi was intercepted by the FBI because he was going to blow up a power plant station or a transmission station for power, which would have, potentially knocked out power for an entire state or region. That's the kind of thing that the FBI is working on now. And if they're investigating Nancy Pelosi, they're not going to have the bandwidth to stop attacks against our infrastructure. And that can be...
Well, that was my follow-on question. Like, it's not just that he is gutting them as a form of retribution for the investigations they launched on people in his orbit. He intends to repurpose the FBI to go after his own political enemies. Yep. I mean, that is scary all by itself, especially when you factor in what the FBI won't be able to do given those distractions.
Yeah, it's what could have happened. Well, let me back up. Most people don't know when the FBI is being effective. Most people don't read DOJ press releases. When Merrick Garland gives, the current attorney general gives a statement about a terrorist being intercepted, it usually doesn't make mainstream news. The only time that people pay attention to what the FBI is doing is when they fail, like when they failed on January 6th. And, out of the thousands of cases that, or hundreds that have been successfully prosecuted for January 6th, most of the evidence that has been used in these trials was gathered by people like me, who were just searching on the internet for evidence of criminality that existed in the public domain so that we could collect it and provide analysis and hand it over to the FBI so that they can prosecute the cases.
What does Task Force Butler have in store over the next during this transition period and beyond?
So Task Force Butler is a teeny tiny but very effective organization. We currently have 2 full-time staff, which is a big improvement from where we had been for the last couple of years. We have secured funding because of our partnership with Common Defense, and we will be expanding our staff so that we can start focusing on regional and state-focused research. So we're going to be with Common Defense engaging in what we're calling the Outposts Project. We're going to be pairing Common Defense's street activists, professional full-time paid organizers who train people how to do things like write op-eds, hold a protest or a press conference effectively and safely. And we'll have in the background them paired up with a full-time investigator on the Task Force Butler side who's performing security analyses, threat analyses, and who are looking for evidence of hate crimes in their backyards. So that program will be expanding over the next few years. I hope we're able to do it fast, but we're starting from a very low level. So, I can't imagine what we'll be able to accomplish with more full-time staff, because it's been really volunteers have been the backbone of this organization.
And how can people help?
So if people want to help, they can go to taskforcebutler.org, commondefense.us, click the sign up link, and they'll be led into the pipeline. Now, I want to manage expectations. Not everybody's going to get to be an investigator with Task Force Butler. A big reason that we're partnering with Common Defense is because they're a much larger organization and they have much more for people to do to get active in their communities. And we have to be very specific and small and safe on the TFB side. So if folks want to get involved in TFB, Task Force Butler, the first step is get involved in Common Defense.
All right. Well, we'll put links to all of that in the show notes. Kris, inspired by what you're doing. Keep it up.
Thanks a lot, brother. Appreciate you having me on.